So welcome to Science Minds. I'm Andy Dikopoulos, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Dr. Randi Hagerman today. So thank you so much for being here.
It's my great pleasure.
Yeah, so we'll jump into things. We'll talk about the science in a little bit, which I'm very interested to chat with you about. But on a more personal level, you know, you're such a huge person in the field of developmental disabilities, in the field of Fragile X. But I'd love to hear a little bit about just sort of who is Randi Hagerman away from the science? What do you like to do in your free time? What do you like to, what are your hobbies? Like, who are you outside of the Mind Institute and your practice?
Sure. Well, I am a workaholic, so my work, I spend a lot of time on my work, but I spend a lot of time with my kids, and now I have 4 grandchildren.
Okay.
Oris, Nuna, Jenna, and Avery, but 2 of them live in Louisville, Colorado, and 2 live in Tennessee, in Knoxville. So we travel a lot to the grandchildren to spend time and encourage them to come out to California and, partake of our swimming pool. And I love to do arts and crafts with the grandchildren. I love to do eco-dyeing. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
Okay, so it's using plants, from the environment to dye scarves and other types of clothing.
Okay.
And I make beautiful eco-dyed scarves. I like to also do shibori. Do you know what shibori is?
I've heard of it, but I'm not too familiar.
Okay, it's where you fold, like this could be shibori. You fold the cloth and then you wrap it with a string, and then you dye it, and I do tie-dye or indigo dyeing. Mm-hmm. You dye it and it makes beautiful designs. Oh, cool. So I like to do scarves and clothes with shibori, tie-dye, or eco-dyeing. I love to make fabrics, and I do this with the grandchildren whenever possible. Yeah. But also I have 2 daughters, Karen and Hillary, so I do it with my daughters too.
That's awesome. Where do you get the plants? Where do you get the materials?
From my neighborhood.
Okay.
There's certain eucalyptus trees in Davis that give beautiful red and orange colors. So I take little clippings from the neighborhood. And from my own garden, I grow different plants that I think would be great. Yeah. And then if I'm using regular dyes, I order it usually from Dharma trading companies, so online you can order different dyes too. But the eco-dyeing I take from my neighborhood, so things like turmeric, I can buy at the store, and that makes great yellow. Red, actually purple carrots I get at the Davis Farmers Market, and that makes beautiful purple colors. Yeah. The eucalyptus leaves are great. Also, I grow a lot of roses, so rose leaves are good. A variety of plants from my garden.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing that really interests me, and this has come up in some of my other interviews with other scientists, is this connection between art and science.
Yes.
I'm finding that a lot of scientists are actually very interested in art and excellent artists. And I'd love to hear a little bit about maybe if you see a connection.
Creative art makes you more creative in your science endeavors. My husband, Paul, is a molecular biologist, but when he does art, and I usually force him to do art, he makes really interesting and very different types of art, related to his science too. And also the neuropathologist, oftentimes the stains, of looking at neuropathology and inclusions and neuronal connections are really beautiful. So I would love to get that on fabric, but I think there's a very close connection between art and science.
Yeah, I think that there's a way that it kind of can open your mind. So
Absolutely.
Just thinking about things from a different perspective.
In a different perspective. Yeah. Absolutely, I totally agree.
For sure. Oh, that's awesome. Another thing I'm interested in, you mentioned that you're a workaholic. I noticed you in your office all the time, but I'm interested to hear sort of what your perspective is on like work-life balance and
Sure.
giving time for work,
I
but
thought
also
of
giving
that
time
throughout my career. That's what I do, is try to get a good work-life balance. So let me say that you never achieve an optimal work-life balance, and it also changes through the ages. So when your kids are little, the emphasis should be on family, because those times go very fast. Okay, so if there's a priority, it's definitely family. And after the kids are off doing their own thing, then the emphasis can be on work. But there's always, the tension for work-life balance, and you never achieve a perfect work-life balance. I know, I've been trying to achieve that for my whole career, and I realized that you can never achieve an optimal work-life balance. It's always a push and pull, and depending on what factors, like if your kids are sick, then it shifts to kids, If there's a grant due, it can shift to work for a little while, but it always shifts back and forth depending on what stage you are in life.
Yeah.
And your stage, it needs to be for the kids.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's really nice to hear that. You get advice from all different academics, at least at this stage in my career. Just focus on your family, focus on papers, focus on writing, and it's really hard to find the right balance. Somebody said in a group session a few months ago, they said, everybody gives 100%. There's something to this extent of everybody gives 100%, but if you want to be successful in this field, in academia, you need to be competing with the people who give 150%. And you have to be willing to give that to be successful in this field. And I'd really love, to hear your perspective on kind of that sentiment, especially like thinking about how do you move ahead and achieve at really high levels like you have, but also give time to family, give time to children, those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, there are times when you give 200%, after the kids are asleep. That's when I focus on work. But I think when the kids are young, you have to spend those evenings before they go to sleep with them, reading stories, playing games, interacting. You have to be there for them. And my best memories are from my kids and my grandchildren. Those are my best memories.
Yeah.
My best memories are not necessarily from work. What drives me in work is also what the patients need. So the important thing in life, from my perspective, is relationships. So relationships not only within your family, but also for me, relationships with my patients. So oftentimes there can be a great need in terms of the patient's need. And, since the advent of email, I spend a lot of time on email, answering questions, taking care of patients by email, in addition to in person. It's trying to help the families. That's what drives me. It's not necessarily the science and a big achievement. It's when you treat families and find something better for families, the achievements are secondary, and I know that what I love about research is that, when you find something that's helpful for one family, that's one family that you help. But when you do research and write a paper about something, it's international families that make a difference, that you make a difference for. For instance, I was in the jungles of Brazil, and a family came up to me and said, and they had very poor English, but they held up a book that I published years ago, and they said half of the book was on treatment of Fragile X syndrome, and they said, this book has made all the difference for us. And I realized that writing a book or writing a paper influences families all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful. I mean, I love influencing just the family that I see in clinic, but when you can multiply that by millions and help people around the world, and we do such great research at the Mind, I think it's really important to get that information out to the rest of the world. You know, you don't want to keep it in, you want to share for everybody to do, and you want to encourage more people to be in the Fragile X field and the research field, because that's what makes advances that help the families.
Yeah. And that's what's so inspiring to me about sort of your perspective as a clinician, kind of a clinician first.
Absolutely.
And being able to just keep that perspective of family first and let the families, let the people drive the science.
Absolutely. In fact, I don't know how researchers can get new ideas, because it's the families that teach me everything. Mm-hmm. The families, the mothers whose children I see with Fragile X syndrome, those mothers are the ones that talk to me about their fathers who are having problems. And that's how we discovered FaxTest, is because I was willing to listen to the mothers. Mothers know all. Yeah. Mothers, I have such great respect for mothers of kids with Fragile X, kids with the premutation, kids with autism, kids with other neurodevelopmental disorders. They are so strong and they do so much. But they tell you, they give you insights about other family members, about the phenotype of the kids. You know, you learn everything from the family.
Yeah, that's amazing. What do you think, you know, you've been around in the field for a while. What do you think is particularly special or unique about this point in time, doing science now?
Well, doing science now, there's so many new advances, you know, new advances in, for instance, quantitative outcome measures, MRI studies, DTI, PET scanning, all kinds of things. But so many advances in genetics and thinking about how mutations in one disorder influence the protein expressions. You know, when a protein isn't there, like when the FMR1 protein isn't there, it dysregulates many pathways. It controls about 30% of all the genes that, when mutated, cause autism. So because FMRP is a regulator of so many things, including translation, but also aspects of transcription, epigenetic stuff, that when that protein is not there, many of the pathways that are disrupted link up with other disorders. So that if we find a targeted treatment for Fragile X, it might be helpful for many other disorders, like the targeted treatment metformin for Fragile X might also be helpful for premutation carriers, maybe subgroups of individuals with autism. And the animal models have really advanced treatments at this time, but also we are on the verge of gene therapy. Gene therapy is going to change the whole face of medicine, particularly genetics, you know. When there's mutations, if we can, you know, put the normal protein back with gene therapy, or put the normal gene back, or calm down the excess messenger RNA with oligos. I mean, there's so many things that we may be able to improve with gene therapy or stem cell therapy. It's really a very exciting time.
Looking back over your career, what advice would you give to your former self, your younger self? You know, thinking about choices you've made, or things that you've done, or the way that you've approached your career. What advice would you give to yourself?
I think I would spend even more time with the children when they're young, and take even more pictures and more videos. I don't have enough, and I knew I had to do a lot, but I think I would do even more. even more. And I love working with people, trainees, and getting them into medicine and talking about the importance of the relationship. And the more you give in medicine and in family interactions, the more you get back. And that's true of everything in life. And so being tolerant and giving more and being more supportive and being positive, I think that's the very special thing in life.
Yeah. Well, it's been absolutely wonderful to chat with you a little bit, and thank you so much for your insight and your all that you contributed to the field. It's just been a pleasure.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was founded in 1998 with a promise to reduce and prevent the disabilities that can be associated with autism and other neurodevelopmental conditions. Every day, our clinicians and researchers make progress on that promise. Our groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other conditions associated with disability are helping affected individuals achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website or our social media platforms to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.